and be my stars tonight. Fields grow anew with the spring of life. In this sheath of truth will I wrap myself tight. The landscape, it goes for miles. The myths of old, they breathe.
Hi Shona, thanks for your wonderful questions. I'll try to get to them. Excuse me if I miss out on any or can't think of what to say on some of them, but they're mostly regarding the female Illuminati, so thanks for your interest in that, and be sure to go over to the website. Some of your questions pertain to stuff we have on the website. The first question you had was, I'd be interested to learn how Michael researches for the upcoming tour. Well, yeah, I mean, the film is one thing, the program is one thing, the talk for the tour is another, more compressed. I'll certainly be having to recap, some of the stuff I've done, because a lot of the motifs that we looked at in the Atlantis book will now be looked at in a slightly different way, which is the key with this kind of subject matter. It's not wrong to do that by any means. This is like a Rubik's Cube. One has to turn it in every conceivable way. Like a detective, you look at the same information from different perspectives, come back to it time and time again. Never assume that just one perspective is going to answer it. This thing has been long in the making, this levels of conspiracy, and so it's going to take a whole lifetime, and it has taken me a lifetime. So the research is just simply a day-by-day process, but I've done it over a period of maybe 20-30 years. A lot of this stuff began back in 1982. But certainly heated up in earnest around 92, and then became public in 2000. But that's just public. I mean, I was doing this kind of research long before that. And then what you've got to do is just pare it out, break it down, try to make some of the more esoteric aspects coherent, read everything that's written by other people that's out there, and notice the X factors in their work, stuff that just doesn't make sense or is contradictory, and then come back with solutions, come back with replaying, reiterating what others have said. Because the vast amount of authors maybe have a very narrow perspective, they may be into the right subjects, they may have a deal of passion, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they themselves are well read, or that they've come to the correct conclusions. So one has to go over their work and I wouldn't say correct it or anything like that, but I'd say just offer new perspectives that may be a little bit more coherent, or you just have to break ground completely, like it is with the female Illuminati. This is something that hasn't been touched on by anyone, so you are really out on your own. So in that case, you've got to be a little bit more brave. You've got to trust in what you're looking at, researching, and you have to research the works of people who may be talking about, say, for instance, goddess traditions or what have you, but they have no concept of what you're talking about. They're approaching it from some completely different sociological point of view or New Age point of view. So you're a little bit taking a risk, by construing these things, subject matters, in a different way. But as long as it opens the perspectives, as long as it breaks consensus trance, as long as it gets us to look at ourselves and the world and the cosmos in a new way, fresh way, then it's worth it. Even if people don't necessarily agree with every detail of what you're talking about, And nor do I say that I'm right in everything when I'm looking at these matters. To me, it's of interest, so the time has come where I share it with the world, but these would be private studies anyway, even if I didn't have that public persona, what have you. They're just interesting subjects to me. Then you say, can you provide links to the research? Yep, go to the website, any relevant stuff. Before I got blocked from Facebook, we even had a separate female Illuminati page. But right now what we're doing is just posting it on the female Illuminati website. That's where to go for the research. Will you compare non-Illuminati bloodline women in this comparison of differences and so on? There really isn't such a thing as non-Illuminati if you're talking about who we are as people, because we've all got the alien DNA. So some of us are born to wealthy families, others aren't. some of us have been obsessed with getting political power, others could care less about it. But everyone is implicated in this. It's a pyramid. So what those guys at the top do, in the end, will filter down, drip feed down to the bottom levels. We end up living in their forensic filth. Our thinking is contaminated by their thinking. They've employed teachers and instructors and all sorts of mysterious breeding priests and what have you. So we're deeply up to our necks in the world that these people have created. So whether we like it or not, we're involved. And we have the great power to do something about all of this, to turn it around if we should so desire to do that. And I believe we should be doing that. So it's there certainly is a sisterhood out there that is absolutely, good. I mentioned this in the Atlantis book. So this is not in any way any indictment of womankind. It's certainly not any kind of misogynist rant. It's to show that just like men, the evil that men have done, that doesn't then mean that there's no good men in the world. So just as there are many very good women, it doesn't mean that there's no evil female sisterhood. I want to get into that, show that there is indeed such a sisterhood and how they got started, what's on their mind and what are they up to. And that's a really fascinating story. So the general public may assume, you ask, that a female Illuminae are black witches who have gathered for generations together alongside the male Illuminati. The very word suggests that they're illumined. What does this mean? Illuminated in exactly what way? This is the term they give themselves, so it's not for us to really comment on it. It's to do with light, obviously. They're Luciferians. They're Gaianum. They go back to the old dragon court, Atenists, which implies sunlight, doesn't it? Aten is the sun god. You could call them the brothers of light, princes of light is how they refer to themselves. Exilarchs, you name it, Order of Melchizedek, they cover themselves in so many names, Masons, Rosicrucians, and the Illuminati. I think it's a good name, it fits them very well because they think of themselves as illumined ones, and their conception of light, though, is very different than ours. That's has to be always brought out. And then there's that technicality that just because you're a Luciferian doesn't mean you're actually a Satanist. This is Christians have brought this to the table, and it's not very accurate. A Luciferian has a lot more to do with Venus cults and all of that than to do with outright Satanism, which is actually a very comic book sort of dumb show version of what's going on. The thing of what's going on is very sophisticated. So just labeling things as Satanism and thinking in terms of Satanism is actually totally misleading, actually. But it's also just simply, a very lowbrow, explanation of what's really happening in our world. And it says, are the male Illuminati magicians just as powerful as the female equivalent? The answer is, to all intents and purposes, yes. And males are part of the female Illuminati, as we'll see. It's not just strictly female at all. I just use that term, female Illuminati, because there is a sisterhood that's been at work for a long time, but men, they recruit men. They have their own sons, for that matter. So yeah, males are just as much involved in it as the females are. Now, if they're not, then this hidden sisterhood of darkness, you say, can be never truly researched. That's not true at all. Speak for yourself maybe, but after 30 years of research, anything can be uncovered, especially if your eyes have got acclimatized, to the darkness, so to speak, by studying occult subjects. The trail, I said this before, even with normal conspiracy studies, they've left trails. The etymology, the symbolism, that led us. You could have said that the normal conspiracy was hidden 30 years ago, before any of this started up. But look at the progress we've made. So I'm just jump-starting a new angle, a new avenue in it, and you'll soon see by my work, when it's completed, that it can be researched, and that you can find out a great deal about it. It's just that we're in the early stages. And I don't profess that we'll ever know all about it, but we can certainly look over the fence. We may not get into the mansion, but you can certainly look over the fence and see what kind of shenanigans is going on. Then you say, I'm confused about the biblical story about the fall of Satan and the arrival of the Nephilim. Did Satan fall to earth before the Nephilim? That's an interesting question. I think that really the Satan falling to earth metaphor does involve the Nephilim. That's what I said in the first chapters of the Atlantis book. That's the best way to look at it. I don't see how it could have stood as a metaphor. And it is a metaphor. But I don't think it could have. I don't see in any way in which it makes sense prior to that time. You see, because even Adam and Eve's expulsion from the garden makes sense in terms of the genetic manipulation and the fall out of order. We talked earlier about us losing the center of the earth and falling out of nature's harmony. So that would certainly fit. But when it comes to Satan's fall particularly, there are other translations of it, but I think the best one really is the coming of the Nephilim, in my opinion. That's not to say that there aren't other ones, other explanations for it, but they're less good. They're less good. Then your final question is, your previous research into the genetic alterations of humans with Nephilim makes sense. When a different species is infused with another of completely different biological makeup, there's always some sort of rejection within the DNA pool. I particularly like the fact that you mentioned the effects of this schism from the alien genetic infusion. The psychological schism would result from the stronger host's DNA rewriting the weaker, thus creating a battle within. I think I might have asked this question more than once. Well, these questions you need to ask more than once. You need to ask them continually and all through your life, and also the scientists are leaking out more and more about DNA, And there's no question in my mind that how is it after hundreds of thousands of years of incredibly slow development, then within a period of less than 10,000 years, we're doing the most sophisticated technical things. Obviously something has gone wrong. Something interfered with the hominids on this planet. And I'm not the only one to think that. People as high up as MIT and CIT, we have Lawrence Gardner, we have all the people I mentioned throughout my work, and I make sure to do that. I make sure to mention all of those people from every walk of life, the Michael Cremos and what have you. We need to bring a whole library of work together, not just what Michael Tsarion is doing. We need to bring a lot of different subjects together and see if what I'm saying makes sense. Well, there's no question in my mind that DNA was crossed, and that has caused a very deep biological dichotomy, which is then seen in everything else we do, in all other areas of life. It permeates. That conflict, that dualism, that struggle, that sense of conflict within the self, within the psyche, and then out into the theatre of the world, you see. And I trace it back to not only the genetic interference which caused a trauma, but then the subsequent earth traumas as well. So there was trauma after trauma. There was a sequence of devastating traumas, both biological and terrestrial, that caused modern consciousness to come into being. And it's in a wrecked state. And we're slowly trying to siphon through that chaos, very much in the way that the character in the Pink Floyd movie, The Wall, puts together the mandala piece by piece from all the shattered parts of his room. That's what we're basically doing, and you can argue whether some people are doing it good and other people are doing it bad, or have we made much progress. Those are all relative questions, of course. The idea is that we're trying desperately to put this consciousness together, glue it all back, and see how it stands up. It's a pretty difficult and in-depth and long-running process, and it may not be ultimately successful. So, it's early days, yeah.
They can't win because, as I've all said in my other metaphysical work, evil contains within it the seeds of its own destruction. And one really needs to meditate on that deeply and also see it applied in your own life, with the tossers that surround us and all the evil injustices that are done, even in plain view. Watch that experience. Watch what happens to a person that who's evil and ruthless and negative. Just observe it. And you'll notice that this is in fact the case, and it's certainly the case up the fractal. Evil contains within it the seed of its own destruction. The moment that you take that kind of anti-human negative stance, you're just waving a red flag to nature, go come and get me, which is exactly what's happening now. It's called the age of revealing and the age of awakening. All the message that somebody like me can give is, can you please get into the spirit of that? Because it's happening anyway. And you can either get into sync with it, or you can just sit there and be smashed when, you know, the river takes a turn. Your ego boat, right, will be smashed. Can you let go of the shores, like the Hopi prophecy says? Can you let go of the oars and go with that flow? Because it's a very dynamic flow, and it will handle it. What happens with us is that we think, oh my God, what's little old me going to do? It's really difficult, you know. And then it becomes like you're suddenly taking it personally, as if your ego is going to be able to run out there like in the old days, you know, grab a sword and do something about it. We have no capacity in that realm. It's a mixture between tremendous responsibility and self-awareness of it, but at the same time the ability to, as Neil was saying, go yin, let go and let the higher force guide you, because without that guidance, you're pottering around is like a kid with a giant sword, you know, playing games. A higher form of guidance and a higher form of strategy takes care of this. It doesn't mean I'd negate your responsibility, but it means try to always remain with your head in the clouds but your feet on the ground. This is both a physical war, but it's also a psychic one. And the guidance that comes to you is the most important thing, and it will show you where to go and what to do about it. And that kind of particular guidance I'm talking about is not the same kind of sorcery that the Black Lodge has. They have high intelligence, and they have tremendous human knowledge about us on the most fundamental level. But they lack that connection to the higher intelligence. And that's their ultimate downfall, together with what I said about evil having the seeds of destruction within it. You choose that road, and you will be terminal. You choose the organic, living, feminine, you know, flow of the Tao, and no matter what tyrannies exist in the world, no matter how things get bleak, even if things get 10 times as bleak as they are now, worse, like a prison planet, really and truly, as long as you're with that flow, you're in your center, and it doesn't matter, you see. So it's all about where you are, and they can't inhabit that place, which is why they want dominion, right, over the world. If you can't rise yourself, what's the next best thing? Push everybody down.